Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are talking about one of my absolute favorite premium ships in the game, the Tier 9 Premium American Battleship, Georgia. Now, as you can tell by the title of this video, in my opinion, this ship is simply one of the best things to ever happen to this game. So the Georgia was released all the way back in June of 2019. For coal and for outright purchase, so I do believe she is technically a premium ship. But unfortunately, since 10.1, the ship is no longer available for purchase, either from the armory or for cash, unfortunately. Now you might be thinking, well, Sealord, why are you talking to us about a ship that we can't outright buy anymore? And my answer would be, well, I finally wanted to play it again after reading some of the comments talking about her yesterday, since yesterday's video was talking about remove premium ships. Fair few of you guys commented talking about the Georgia, and also there is some potential for the ship to return in the future. If you guys haven't been paying attention to the auction house, they just had the Nelson in there for auction, which she was a removed premium ship, and plus the ship is available in the Santa Container event at the end of the year, and we're also coming upon the potential summer sale again, where they brought back several other premium ships that you could buy in these summer containers. You could of course buy them for sure, you could buy the containers and you had a chance of getting them, but it is possible that here very soon the ship might make a return. And plus too, it's a fun ship that I haven't played in a while, and I took her out, had some very excellent games, and I want to talk about her. Alright, so let's go ahead and go over the Georgia's stats and her features, and I'll talk to you guys about what she's like playing today, because it has been some time since this ship has been released, and the game has changed a lot since this ship came out. Let's go ahead and dive right on in, shall we? So, what is this thing, first off? So, the Georgia is actually a historical ship, kind of. She was one of the proto-Iowa designs that was drawn up when the Navy was trying to figure out exactly what they wanted in the Iowa class. And it's very cool. I have American Battleships by, I can't remember the gentleman's name, and this design is in that book. It's very neat seeing that design in that book, and then seeing that ship come to life in this game. So, she is basically one of the contenders for what the Iowas could have been. Now, you might be noticing some big similarities between the ships, of course, overall, but the main difference is, of course, her main battery guns. So she has 6 457mm guns on her decks, and that is quite a bit of firepower, if you will, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so let's talk about the armor first. So she is, well, pretty lightly armored like the Iowa. She has a 32mm bow with no type of special armor strips or anything like that. Her outer plating on the exterior of her ship on the midsection is 38mm of armor, as are her side plating above the waterline. Below the waterline drops to 32. Stern plating is 32 as well. Bow and stern deck are 32 as well. And mid deck is 38. So the ship is fairly squishy, especially against HE. Of course, at the level of HE spam in the game today and even back then, the ship does eat a lot of HE damage. But when you strip that armor away and actually look at her belt, it's a bit better. Now, her armor belt is 310mm thick. Her citadel is exposed, but it is below the waterline. And when I say exposed, I mean she doesn't have any turtleback, citadel, anything like that. It's just right at the waterline. So you might be thinking, oh, this ship's fairly difficult to citadel, right? Well, the way that you play Georgia lends to her getting citadeled a bit, because since the citadel is right at the waterline, I mean quite literally, anytime you're turning hard over one way or the other, the ship's rocking and rolling and more citadel is exposed. And definitely from range, this is not a very difficult ship to citadel. If you've played in any large caliber gun battleships like, Republic and above at higher tier, it's very easy to citadel the Georgia from long range. And of course too, if you catch them in the right time when they're turning one way or the other, it's a fairly easy ship to citadel. So for survivability, she has 74,100 hit points, which is about right for a tier 9 battleship. She has 26% torpedo damage reduction, which isn't fantastic. And that brings us down now to her main battery guns. So those 6 457mm 18-inch guns. That's a fair amount of firepower to have at tier 9. Now, first off, she does only have 6 of these guns. which does mean when you do miss, it is pretty darn painful. When you have 12 guns and you miss 3 shots, it's not so bad, but when you have 6 guns and you miss 2 shots, that's pretty rough. Now, they do have 1.8 Sigma, and you can fit the American Artillery Platoon Mod 2 module on that does crank your dispersion down by another 11%, so that is pretty handy to have here. That gives you 1.8 Sigma on a maximum dispersion of 193 meters at 20 kilometers, which is pretty nice to have. Plus, the reload time on these guns without the reload mod is 26 seconds. Now, I'm reading you guys these stats with my commander module build, which I showed at the beginning of this video. I'll throw it up again here so you guys can see what I'm reading all from. And that's the cool thing talking about the commander build with the Georges, that even in today's World of Warships, after the commander rework, there's 3 builds you can run on the Georgia, and it works pretty darn well. And there's even little variations upon those builds too. You can, of course, go for a standard battleship tank build, and then with the modules, you can build into the main battery guns, because, again, 6 18-inch guns at Tier 9 with American AP is some nice guns to have. So you can do that, and it's really, really viable. It's really, really, really good. You could go for a full-on meme secondary build with the commander skills and then with the modules too. And she's actually pretty darn good at that as well. And then you could go with what I've got here, which is what I call the best of both worlds build, where I've got a fair amount dumped into the secondaries with the commander skills and the modules, but I have that American Special Artillery Platoon Mod 3 mod on my last mod slot, and I do have a little bit built into my survivability with fire prevention in the commander build as well. And it works out pretty darn good, as you'll be seeing on the screen throughout this video. But anyway, I just want to talk about that real quick. It's not often that in today's World of Warships you have a ship with a couple of builds, let alone potentially 3 builds, that you can run and still do well in. Anyway, back to the guns though. So, her HE, which you won't really use it too much unless there's only DDs left alive on the enemy team, or if someone's going to bow into you. It has a 43% chance of causing a fire, maximum damage of 6,450, and 77 millimeters of penetration. And it comes out the tubes at 800 meters a second. Her AP, which is what you'll be using most of the time, does a maximum damage of 15,750 and comes out the tubes at 732 meters a second. And if you're wondering about the velocity there, the guns are a 48 caliber gun rather than a 45 or a 50, so that's why the shells are moving a little bit faster than your traditional American battleship. When it comes to looking at like the North Carolina, how she has the 45 caliber gun, and those shells basically fall out the barrel tubes. They're going so slow. Then you get up to the Iowa that gets a little bit more pep into it because it has the 50 caliber gun, and this one almost has a 50 caliber gun, has a 48 caliber gun, so that does help with the velocity a bit. As you can see on the screen too, with that American's Artillery Platoon Mod 2 mod on, the dispersion is actually really nice, even with 1.8 Sigma. And a 26-second reload time on top of that. Don't get me wrong, there's still some wonky salvos, as I'm sure you'll see, and some of it is my aiming. But overall, the shells generally go where you want with the build that I have on her. Now, her secondaries. She has Massachusetts secondaries, essentially. They are some wonderful, wonderful 127mm guns. They get the improved American secondary accuracy. They reload much faster than like the Montana or the Iowa's secondaries do at 3.4 seconds with the build that I have on it. You could take the secondary module in the last slot and get that down to like 2.7 seconds if you really want to build into the secondaries, and that's perfectly workable too. And having 20 127mm guns go off that fast can be very overwhelming to quite a few ships. Even though they only pin 21mm of armor, they do have a 5% chance of causing a fire, and that is without the fire flag zone. You can get that up a little bit with the fire flags and with the commander skill if you really want that to happen. But even with what I have here, I find that these secondaries, through the sheer volume that you'd be throwing at the enemy, are definitely good enough to deal with whatever it is you're dealing with on top of your guns and such. And these secondaries, needless to say, absolutely rip through DDs once they get their accuracy built up. That is something that Georgia lost a bit of when the commander skills changed to where they don't get the instant accuracy bonus anymore. Because before that, this ship was a DD's worst nightmare to deal with. for another reason we're going to get to here in a moment. But these secondaries were so good at just eviscerating destroyers, and they still are today. Once you have the accuracy built up and you have a full build in terms of the accuracy modules and the commander skills too. But they're still very good at setting fires. They'll make light cruisers and destroyers just run from you if they can, and they have a decent enough fire starting chance that heavy cruisers and battleships will be filling the burn with all these secondaries coming at them. Alright, so airstrike, she's got one. I think it's only like a 6-kilometer one. No, it's 10-kilometer one. Okay, cool. 10-kilometer airstrike for submarines. AA, she's overall pretty decent. She has a rating of 84. She's not a no-fly zone like the Alabama, but she is still an American battleship. I think she has, she still has a lot of Orlikins on her, because again, this was a proto-Iowa design, so this ship was designed for, I think, the early, the late 30s, 1938. Neat. Alright, so she has a lot of Orlikins. She doesn't have as many of the wonderful Bofors as the Iowa has, of course, so that's probably why she doesn't feel as good as the Iowa. But she can still make a CV regret its life choices if they hang around the AA too long. Now, maneuverability, this is where the real highlight of this ship comes in. This ship, just with the speed flag, can go 34.7 knots base. That's fast for a Tier 9 battleship. 34.7 knots with just the speed flag. We'll get to the rest of its maneuverability when we look in the gimmick box. She has a turning circle radius of 890 meters and a rudder shift time of 16.5 seconds as well. Concealment without the commander skill is 14.8 kilometers. With the commander skill, you can get that down by further 10%, which of course is another very viable choice you can do with the ship, but I choose not to because I play the ship quite aggressively. Alright, for its box O gimmicks. First off, engine boost. She gets a 15% engine boost, which gets this battleship up over 40 knots. And with brisk, I believe you can get her up to, I think, 44 knots. Which is ridiculous for a ship this big to be moving that fast, but it can. And it does. And there's a fair few DDs you run down going that fast at tier 9 and 10. So yeah, this is literally a battleship that can run down destroyers. It's a beautiful piece of machinery. It's stupid. It's dumb. But it's fun as hell. So that is active for 180 seconds. Reloads in 85.5 seconds. You can get 3 of those base. You used to be able to get 4, but it's 3 now. And let's be real. If you use all 3 of her engine boost, you're in for a pretty wild match if you used all 3 of them already. She does get a catapult plane. You can get a spotter or a fighter, depending upon what you want. And she gets a heal. She gets 444 HP back per second. And it is the fast cooldown time of the Massachusetts as well, which is a godsend for this ship. It's active for 30.8 seconds, and you get that 38-second reload time that the Massachusetts does get. And you get 5 of those with the build that I have on it. And this is a big pickup for the Georgia. Without this hill, the Georgia would be a much, much, much less viable ship. Because yes, it is pretty thinly armored, and it does eat a lot of random hits here and there. But that hill really helps it stay in the fight and allows you to be more and more aggressive than you normally would be. And she also gets the American damage con that is active for 22 seconds, which is wonderful. And if you guys don't know, when damage con is activated, no fires, no floods will be set on you during that entire time while that damage con is active. And again, another godsend there to the Georgia. And this one reloads in 76 seconds. Alright, so where does that leave the Georgia today? Well, despite being a ship that started out life being an absolute nutty brawler, you know, a ship that can run down a target in just a few minutes if it's a target trying to run away from it, or a few seconds if it's someone that's bow into you in today's meta. Well, she does quite well, thanks in large part to her main battery guns. Again, this is still 6 18-inch guns at Tier 9, which was massive back in the day that a Tier 9 ship came out with 18-inch guns that wasn't the Musashi. Now, don't get me wrong, she can't overmatch 32 millimeters of armor. She can't overmatch 30, which back when the ship came out wasn't a huge deal. Like, yes, it's, you know, it's a nice threshold to be able to overmatch, but there wasn't a whole lot of ships that that actually mattered on. But now today, there's of course a whole lot more cruisers in game with 30mm plating that you can overmatch than when the Georgia was released back in the day. So she's got that going for her now too. And while yes, the 457mm caliber club has been quite populated recently with all the recent battleships we've been getting, of course it's still a big gun to have in the game, so that really helps her stay in the fight too. But still, a ship that can go 40 plus knots, a battleship that can go 40 plus knots with 6 18-inch guns is still a very, very big threat today. You can run down a flank so easily in this ship and get on the side of the enemy team before they even know what's going on. Just like the Incomparable can do at tier 10 with her 6 20-inch guns. It's a very similar situation here, but the George is a slightly tankier ship than the Incomparable. You don't find yourself getting citadel as much in the George as you do in the Incomparable. And that's still, again, a very scary thing to deal with if you're on the enemy team. And if you're bowing to the Georgia and they got their speed boost on you, you better focus everything that you've got on that ship, because it's going to just murder you if you don't kill it before it gets to you. Now, what's really helpful to the ship too, like I mentioned with the commander builds, is that you don't have to play the ship as a brawler anymore. You can. It's still viable to do so, and thank God it is. It didn't get the Siegfried treatment, thank God. But you can run it as a main battery ship. And it is a very, very fearsome ship to deal with, just dealing with the main battery guns on this thing, even from its limited range of 20 kilometers. If you want to go for a concealment build in the main battery, tank build, you're not going to see this ship only when it wants you to. You're not going to see this ship otherwise, because it's fast, it's stealthy. Sure, it only got 20-kilometer range, but the ship goes freaking 44, almost 45 knots if you build into it properly. It can run away from just about anything that poses a real threat to it. And it can run away really, really well. So she's still a very viable ship today, and one that I do kind of wish they would bring back. I get why they removed her, because this ship was everywhere when she was out for sale. And for good reason. She's good fun. Imagine that, a ship that you can build into in 3 or 4 different ways potentially. That's fun in most of those builds. That's a premium ship where you can earn money. Why can't we have the ship back, Wargaming? I certainly don't think she's overpowered by any stretch of the imagination. Well, I mean, I could certainly see where you'd have a very strong argument for her being overpowered, but I don't think she is. Her heal, sure, it will help her stay alive for some time, but the ship, again, isn't really that tanky, as I'm sure some of you have probably noticed watching the video here. There's several times when I eat some shots that are at just kind of weird angles where you expect them to bounce, but then it chunks your ship for a third of its health. That happens a lot in the Georgia. I think it's just the combination of the armor layout and the thickness of the armor too in some places. It just allows battleship caliber guns to bite where you wouldn't expect them to be able to bite, but it does. And yeah, that coupled with the HE and the change that we've got with the carriers and of course submarines now too, I don't think it would be a terrible thing for them to bring this ship back. But anyway, guys, that's my 2 cents on the Georgia. If you ever have the opportunity to get this ship, I would absolutely pick it up. If this ship comes back in a Black Friday event, absolutely get the ship. If you have a chance of getting it out of a container, I wouldn't really go for that, because again, you know, you're never guaranteed to get it. But if, again, the opportunity ever presents itself for you guys to assured get this ship, go for it. Like, if this shows up in the auction, go for it. It's absolutely worth it. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about the Georgia in the comments down below. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Tuesday. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. On our way to 35,000 subs, getting very close to that goal. And I am planning on doing a giveaway when we get there, so make sure you guys stick around for that. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Tuesday, a wonderful week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.